Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Fired Up with CJ show. Today we have Yvonne Tally, and we are talking about her book, Breaking Up with Busy, Real Life Solutions for Overscheduled Women. And I've got to tell you, I desperately need this book. In fact, I'm talking to someone after an hour after we hang up the phone, in which I want to get your coaching advice on. Because I have a feeling I'm overdoing it again. And this time I figure I may be able to prevent myself from doing that. So, welcome. We need your book desperately.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
So, I was talking to, I have a women's group that I'm part of. And someone was sharing that right now they just don't have enough time to even eat. So she said that her husband, who works in the same office as she does, reminds her to eat, but she just can't remember to eat, which is kind of a shocking type of thing. And she said, I'm constantly, when I get home, I have a hard time trying to relax and to get, because there's this part of me that wants to get work done. And I thought it was interesting because this is something that happened to you too, right? You tell me a little bit about your life experience that brought you to writing this book.
Yes. Well, the woman that's forgetting to eat or having to be told to eat and reminded, that's just a signal that things are out of balance. And that's certainly what happened to me. And what was so ironic about it was that I spent all these years helping people live a vibrant and healthy lifestyle, that I missed my own signs of being overscheduled and way too busy. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, that landed me in the hospital thinking I was having a heart attack when in fact I was having a panic attack.
Mm.
And in that moment when that happened, and if anyone out there has ever had a panic attack, it really mimics the signs as though you are having a heart attack.
Mm.
And I remember thinking after I got the doctor came in and said, "Oh, you're going to be fine. It's a panic attack, not a heart attack." Of course, they knew that before they ever got me there. But that in that moment, I felt like such a fraud, thinking,
Mm.
"This happened. Here I'm, the organic eating, healthy minded, meditating, positive thinking person, and here I am." And that's really what started me on my journey. I thought, if I could allow this to come into my life and miss all of the signs, there's got to be a bigger story here.
Mm.
And sure was. And that's the story I wrote about. It brought me to this.
Mm. So one of the listeners wanted to know, how can you tell the difference between a heart attack and a panic attack, since you said they seem very similar?
Yeah. Well, certainly when you're having a panic attack for the first time, because some of the feelings are that you get this tightness in your chest. And that's really what makes you feel as though this is it. It's all over. It
Mm-hmm.
breathe, your throat tightens. What happened for me was my vision became blurry and my legs collapsed out from underneath me. And I literally could not breathe. And I thought, this has got to be a heart attack. And of course,
Mm.
when the paramedics arrived, of course, they knew right away. They know the symptoms and the signs, and they put me on oxygen and so on. And I was feeling, much better quite quickly. And that would not have happened, of course, if it was a heart
Mm, mm. So
attack.
actually, very similar signs. It seems like, even though they're they knew from giving you the oxygen that was yeah. And one of the listeners asked, what are some signs that you need help? And in your book, you actually have 10 different signs. Would you mind if I read them to
Oh,
folks?
please.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one was, you frequently opt out of doing something for yourself when one of your loved one requests your time. Okay, that's me. I'm going to raise each one that's relevant for me. You have a mixed sense of doing too much and not getting enough done. Yeah, that's me too.
Same.
Busy is your new normal. That's me as well. You
You
feel
hand.
I think the thing is that what I'm realizing too, as I was reading this, is there are times in my life where probably everything is true on this list, and times in my life where there isn't. It's a mix. It's not like this perpetual sense of busyness. Don't you think that that's just normal life?
Well, it's certainly normal for a lot of people. And I think what happens with this, and I'll touch on that real quickly because it's kind of important to see what is this busy that I'm writing about, what is this busy that we're experiencing. So the way that it came into our culture, and I do believe it's quite normal for many, many people now, much more than it's ever been before. And what has happened is that, we go back 50 years, leisure was really the sign that you've made it. If you could leave your office right on time and you had people there to do things and you took the weekend off, that was a signal that you had made it in our culture. Well, we really turn that upside down now. And this idea of being busy as the new normal allows us to have this kind of false sense of importance. And in a world where it's so crowded and so many distractions now, and there's a few things that have happened to make, or a few things that have occurred to make this continuous pace of busyness. And of course, economics has a lot to do with that. And when time is seen as more valuable, we don't want to waste it. We want to put as much as we can into a small space. Busy, and you and I are in the same social circle or the same family even. If I'm busy, you're busy, then we're going to be able to connect on that level. So it's given a sense of importance because everybody around us is doing the same thing.
I was just thinking about, I remember seeing a little girl and she had like a fake phone that she was talking into because she saw her mommy doing that. And that must be what you do when you get older, is be at the dinner table talking on the phone. And then I just thought that was so disturbing on so many levels when I saw her like with her little fake phone. And probably nowadays 2-year-olds probably have real phones. Who knows?
Well, that's interesting. You should say that because we see that quite often. You'll see them in the strollers, and they've got their technology right there. It's replaced what the TV used to be. So certainly for my generation, many of us were in front of the TV. But this idea of technology the onset of technology has a great amount to do with this. And this idea of being busy, the person that doesn't have time to eat or the person that doesn't have time to really care for their health, that will eventually catch up with all of us because the busy pace is not something that we can sustain in a healthy and well life forever. We're either going to get tapped on the shoulder by the universe or something's going to show up for us that's going to put us in a position or in a choice position where we have to look at that and make a shift.
Yeah, my son goes to a chiropractor, and my chiropractor said he has the curvature of an 80-year-old man, because he's on the phone like this, he's on his computer like this, and so his spine, he's getting How many people did you know at age 17 had to go to a chiropractor? No one. But nowadays, because we have these electronic gadgets and we're hunching up in the bus and, curling up our shoulders and like hunching down looking at our phones or our iPads, I have a feeling the next generation's all going to have these issues with this kind of like curved back. It's kind of horrifying. But I want to continue reading on this list. We could go on forever about the horrors of this all. So we talked about frequently opting out of things, mix of doing too much and not getting enough done. Busy is your new normal. You feel controlled by your schedule. You eat at least one meal each day while standing up or doing something else. You're experiencing weight shifts, skin issues, or hair loss. You've not been getting enough sleep and you have insomnia or your libido is very low. Things you once enjoyed taking time for now seem like inconveniences, and you often feel overwhelmed and anxious. Oh, number 10, you constantly feel like you're rushing just to keep up with yourself. So I can relate to all of these things, and this is kind of the hallmark of, for me, what I would add for my own personal list is I start snapping at people, or I get really impatient. So I'm at the checkout line and I'm thinking, really, you're going to talk this much to the chat? Have your conversation with your friends. Do you see this line? Like when those conversations happen, I'm like, okay, I think you're a little bit too wound up, and it's a function of being too busy.
Well, what happens when we're busy, we're distracted and we forget or we get disconnected with that personal connection with other people. And busy not only affects our health, but it also affects our relationships. And it has a and that part of that snapping and irritability, when we're distracted, it's pretty difficult to have any emotional intimacy. And this is important for people to really hear, because we might have a tendency to kind of say, oh, yeah, I'm busy. Well, isn't everybody? But when we start to look at the miscommunication that starts to occur in our relationship, our significant relationship, when things become more difficult that once seemed to be pretty easy to get done because we're frustrated or we're fatigued from that frustration, that's when we really have to start to take a look at, is this really what I want in my life?
Mm-hmm.
Is this really what is important to me? And let's not forget that when we're on our phones and we're distracted or we're on our electronics, we are teaching the generation coming up from behind us exactly how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And practice grows strong. And
Mm-hmm.
we're really good at being busy because we practice it a lot.
Right, it's a habit. Yeah.
Well, it's because it gives us that false sense of importance. And there's nothing wrong with that. As human beings, we all want to connect. We all want to be a part of something. But getting rid of the distractions, deciding what you want as far as what you want your life to feel like or even your day to feel like, that's kind of the first step of breaking up with busy.
So there was a question on who we're talking to. You were talking to Yvonne Tally, and we're talking about her book, Breaking Up with Busy. So I wanted to go back to another point in your book because, really, if you think about a habit really underlying that habit are a set of beliefs or thoughts that we have. And you have in your book a couple of different thoughts that kind of keep us in the trap. And they may be different for other people or maybe a combination of these. And so I was hoping we could go over some of these. So one of those is the being all trap. So I think I fall under this category. So basically, the central to this trap is a need for reassurance, affirmation, and acknowledgement that you're valued and appreciated. You apply enormous pressure on yourself to be everything to everyone. You're always getting things done, but it's often at the expense of your well-being, distracting you from discovering what you really need or want. So I can completely relate to this. And how does that show up in your own practice when you work with people?
Well, again, the distractions are the big part of it, and that being all is that that idea that if I'm everything, then I will be enough, and if I'm enough, then I will be part of that group that we've talked about. Each group is different. We identify with a certain what's called our reference group. These are the people that we spend the most amount of time with. So this idea of being all shows up in a lot of different ways, but the vein of it is, am I enough? And if I do all, whatever that all might be, typically it's if I run the family well, if my career is just right, if I look the part, all of these things come together. And it's that continuous pace of trying to make that happen on a daily basis. So it's this comparison. And again, I go back to technology, and not to bash technology. I live right in the heart of the Silicon Valley. There's some great things that have come from technology. But when we are always comparing ourselves through social media and through anything that's through technology, and that's really easy to get into that addictive kind of behavior. And if we are distracted by that, then we start to measure, we feel as though we're not measuring up. So this being all is really, it's a bucket without a bottom, because we will never be able to do that.
Right. Well, it's impossible to be everything. So this is related to some of the other kind of traps, and I think it's all related back to what you're saying is, am I valued? Am I enough? That's the root. It seems like almost with every single one of these traps. The other one was keeping up trap. So the idea that you were talking about before, do I have all the right things? Am I living in the right house? Am I driving the right car? In comparison, like you said, in comparison to my friends. And then there's a saying, sorry, go ahead.
Well, and part of that too, these different traps, the reason why I wrote them the way that I did, these were the things that my clients were coming to me and sharing with. So it's easier to identify them when we see them kind of separated out rather than being one. But at the core, really, for all of us, any human being wants two things. We want to be appreciated, and we want to feel happy. Mm-hmm. And so we develop different strategies through our lives to bring that into our lives. Mm-hmm. So depending on what that is, whether you're the overgiver or you're the, be it all, or whatever type of profile you are as far as the overscheduled woman goes, the pleaser, the alpha, whatever it may be. Those are our strategies and our personality combining with those strategies to make our goals happen in life and to bring in that sense of happiness and appreciation.
Mm-hmm. So I think we've talked about all the key ones. So you're saying yes, which is maybe the pleaser, or just wanting to constantly like, oh, will you actually join the PTA? Yes. Um, when you're like, I don't have enough time, but I'll say yes anyway. So pleasing others rewards you with the acceptance and reinforced by praise. So you feel it. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, that pleasing is really important because that gets set up, as so much does, where love is conditional early on in life. And so if I do enough, and if I do enough, then I'll be okay, I'm safe. So that's kind of a little bit of the psychology, if you will, that drive, not that I'm a psychologist, but that drives that behavior as well.
Now I have a son that's like that. So does that mean that I'm actually expecting him to do too much? Is that where that may be coming from? He's a
Well,
pleaser.
the pleaser, well, it could be part of it. It's conditional. It's that conditional acceptance early on where that kind of gets set up. That's a piece of it, certainly.
Okay.
I in a large family, ended up being the pleaser. I wanted everything to be nice. So there's a lot of layers to this. The beauty of it is it can be undone. It can
Right.
be shifted. It can
Right.
be changed. And we start, because when we take time, when we create space and time, that's when we start to expand our imagination and creativity. That's when we start to problem solve. When the brain is so overloaded with busyness, that prefrontal cortex, where all of that happens, the planning, the reasoning, that gets shut down when the cortisol levels are too high. So it's really important, things like meditation and taking space and time and being in nature. And these don't have to be broad sweeps. I don't have to spend 40 minutes a day doing it. But just imagine what you can create as far as wellness and happiness and the sense of a relationship that's more connected just by starting with a small shift. Take 1 to 5 minutes. Make it work for you, because this is about sustaining a lifestyle. This is about developing a lifestyle that is more in line with what you want.
Right. So on all of these, there's a sense of not having a choice, right? So there's not having a choice to do the things that you want because you feel like if I do all these things, I'll be valued. If I please people, then I'll be valued, loved, and appreciated. And so one of the listeners asked, what's the difference between a pleaser and a fixer?
Yeah, it's going to be the motivation behind it more than anything. The pleaser isn't necessarily trying to fix things. The pleaser, although it could be feeling as though that pleaser is trying to fix things. The pleaser just wants things to be nice. It just wants things to be calm and peaceful. Doesn't want anyone to feel uncomfortable. Wants everybody in the
Okay.
experience. Where the fixer will come in and say, I'm the superwoman, I'm the superman. I'm going to make sure that everything is fixed and done, so nobody has to worry about anything, and then that attention will come back to me. That's how I get my fulfillment, is by fixing things so that I'll be valued. I'll be necessary. Where the pleaser is not so much geared towards that as much as helping other people. She wants everyone, or he wants everyone, to feel good in the situation. Doesn't want any conflict.
Okay, got it. That's a good differentiation. And then there's this overgiving trap where someone feels like they're morally obligated or it's the right thing to do to give in this particular way. Where does that come up within your practice?
Yeah, it can be a lot, a lot. And, when we're distracted, and this is an important piece of this, when we're busy, we are distracted. When we're distracted, we don't really take the time to evaluate, again, what is important and what do I want, but we don't really evaluate the difference between what am I giving for? And is this a necessary thing? How is this going to expand my life, enrich my life? And so one of the things that we can do with that is, I always say, look at time and space uncomplicated. In fact, there's an exercise in there for it. This overgiving is just a continuous, it becomes a habit of constantly overdoing, because if I do that, then I'm going to have a sense of importance, and you're going to have a sense of importance towards me. I'm going to be important to you. So that can be a big piece of this overgiving. And one of the things I always share with my clients is, think of 3 circles, and in the center is a heart. And in that heart are all of the people in your life that you know that have your back, that truly love you. They're the ones that you can call at 3 a.m. They don't ask questions, they show up and help. That's your inner circle. And as we move out of that, we have the outer circle. These are the people that we might see on occasion. We see them at work, so on and so forth. We're not going to spend as much time with them, obviously, as our inner circle. That's our family and our close friends. And then as we move out of that, we have that peripheral circle. These are the people that we might see on a rare occasion. We have never been to their house. We might not even know their last name. We see them at the grocery store. We see them at the gym. So when you start to overgive, pause and think about which circle this is going to enrich. That is a step in the direction where you can start to break away from that unnecessary busy. And you'll start to feel better because you'll start to realize all of those people that we spend time with on Facebook, most of them, 99% of them, they're even outside of the peripheral circle. This is why we're busy. We're so distracted by what's outside of that peripheral circle. So bring it back in and enrich your life in a way that's going to be a give and take rather than always an overgiving.
Mm-hmm. Okay, got it. So these are kind of what I'm hearing is whether these are just different traps in the way that we think about things, that in order to be appreciated, valued, and loved, I always have to, give to others at the expense of myself. That's you describe it as the being all trap. And then there's the keeping up trap, which is the thing that you're talking about before, which is wanting to compare yourself to others and saying, like, am I fitting in? And I'm not. Why does that person have a better job than me? And then that may be, again, you're not enough. So you have to do and acquire and do more in order to acquire those things. Saying yes, which is the thing that you're saying is pleasing others, which is to just be like, I just want things to be nice. I don't want conflict. I don't want stress. I want things to be nice. And the last one we spoke about is the overgiving trap, which is the thing that we literally just talked about. So trying to overgive with the hope of maybe if I give more, you'll appreciate me more. Sorry, go ahead.
At the end, what this is about is kind of securing our place, if we will. And this goes way back. And, as far as the hunters and gatherers, we all want a place that we can secure within the tribe, the group, whatever it might be. And we all have these different strategies of making that happen. And much of that has to do with where we came into life, the significant people that molded us and the beliefs that we took on early on. And then when we get to a certain point in our life, and we get to a point where we now can have the opportunity to say, is that really something that I believe and want to have in my life? Is that really a way I want to be in my life? And that was a big part of being able to write this book, was give some clear solutions on how we can now start to move out of whatever that trap might be. And whatever profile we might find ourselves most in, what are some solutions and some practices that can now begin to be the life that I really, really desire and deserve?
So you're saying that you yourself hit the 10 signs. I easily hit the 10 signs probably a month ago. And are these traps ones that you fell into as well? Or are they what was your own personal experience?
Well, I would say that my own personal experience as far as the traps go, I think that being all was definitely one of the ones that I still have to remind myself to pull back. What circle am I serving in this moment? Is this my inner circle, or is this my ego in the way, or what is this? And so I'm in a practice now of making sure that I take that pause to evaluate for myself what circle this is serving, what circle this is enriching. And then I found very, very valuable. And when we talk about the profiles, of course, the perfectionist is one of them. And that I always say I'm a recovering perfectionist. I have to, again, remind myself because, life shows up and we want, and when I'm talking about the pleaser, I'm not talking about going the other direction and being unhelpful and not being of service. I'm talking about the overextension of constantly pleasing, and where is that coming from for you? What is that filling up? What is the constant filling up inside of us that we're trying to ignore our feelings or our sensations within ourselves? So it's important that we reconnect with who we are as human beings, that we do talk to the clerk in the grocery line, that, that's an important connection. And when we feel better and everyone around us can feel better. And I believe that's how we make the world a better place.
Yeah, amen to that. I agree. Um, so you talked about the different types of over scheduled women, OSWs that you call us. All right, so you
Right.
talked about the perfectionist. There's also the pleaser that I think we talked about so far, and then the sorority sister. Who's that? I was a sorority sister, but who's that kind of person? The prototype for that?
She's great. She is the one that you want to have at a gathering, a fundraiser, whatever that might be. She's the one that will bring the group together. Very civic minded, really just community involved, and just has this disposition about her that everything is optimistic. Again, when I talk about these profiles, I'm painting with a really broad brush here.
Yeah.
These are some of the characteristics, and we might find a little bit of ourselves in each one or in one or two.
Mm-hmm.
The downside, or the where she gets herself into a bind, is when this becomes these tendencies and characteristics become resourceful for her, is when she can't find her own self separate from the group. So her identity is really wrapped up into the doing again, and also the group, their acceptance of what she is doing and how she's doing it. So,
Interesting. Okay, I actually can map. I'm in my head. I'm kind of mapping caricatures. Like, oh, okay, that's so and so. Okay, so the perfectionist. We talked about you being that. If that's the one that you can relate to the most, what are some of the unresourceful characteristics of the perfectionist?
oh boy, don't try to make a mistake. It's constant. Everything has to be just right because he doesn't want anybody to see the cracks underneath the perfection. The
Mm,
upside is that when you want to create a beautiful environment, and I was in the professional food business for years, and making a beautiful environment when you walk into a restaurant, the music, the flowers, the colors, all the food, everything. That's a perfectionist is very creative, and she will or he will see where all of that fits in. It's like an orchestra, and
mm,
she's commanding that. So those are beautiful qualities. Where it gets in her way again is when the perfectionism just becomes the driving force in everything, and that she doesn't know when to walk away from something. She
mm.
doesn't. She has to adopt that mindset that sometimes good enough is perfect or is enough,
It's good
because
enough. Yeah.
is enough because the idea, if we wait around for perfection, someone said, if you wait around for things to be perfect, you're going to be waiting for a long, long time. So what I tell my perfectionist friends and clients is I always say, think about it this way. At the end of the day, when you begin to beat yourself up because you didn't do something exactly the way you thought it should be done, or you didn't engage in a way that you thought you should have and it wasn't perfect, look at your day and say, I was not perfect. I am not going to be perfect. I made progress, because
Oh,
it's not perfection. It's about progress. And
I
that
like it.
lightens it up for us. It gives us the
Yeah.
freedom. Yeah, okay, I'm making headway. It's okay that things weren't just exactly perfect.
Right.
It's never going to happen.
Well, my life is full of progress then. Okay. All right. How about the pleaser? What are some of we talked again? I'm going to circle back because we didn't talk about the unresourceful characteristics of the pleaser.
Well, in that over pleasing, she's going to lose her whole sense of who she is as well. And
Mm,
becomes conditional. If she doesn't get the response back when she's done something, we're saying she, but it can be a he also. That becomes a real frustration for her. She'll internalize that and beat herself up for that, or she may become
oh,
angry to the other person and become produce conflict because she didn't get what she expected, and that was great praise. So she has to find
okay.
out what she's doing.
Okay. Again, I'm mapping these two friends of mine. I'm like, oh, okay, that I totally get that now. I
Well,
didn't understand that, and in some ways, if you know, if you want to be kind and compassionate to someone who is a pleaser, just I appreciate so much what you did for me. Thank you. I mean, it's in some ways you don't want to indulge, but at the same time, so it really makes a difference to them. It
there's
makes them
yes, there's
happy.
yes, there's time. See, there's that happiness again. We all want to feel that, and there's times when that's that place that we can come from, very empathetic place. And when we begin to understand that, and that's you brought up the point that I think is so valuable. We can start to engage with not only ourselves but our people that we share our lives with more compassion and understanding and empathy when we understand perhaps where they're coming from, and then knowing that, of course, the solutions are in the book as well. We can start to, not that we have to fix things and not that we have to be the one that's going to save people, but we can, over a cup of coffee, start to move the conversation in a way where perhaps we can sprinkle in some of those solutions. I really appreciate you for who you are, not for what you do. And I don't want you to feel as though you always have to be the one doing all the time. Mm-hmm. In fact, one of the things that I try to share, again, very important, and this can be for all of us, is that when we're always the one that is giving, we take away the experience. That great feeling you have when you give to someone and they say, thank you for such a great help. And that feels really good to know that we've been of service and that we're sharing in a way that we can. When we're always overgiving, we take that away from the other person. Mm-hmm. So it's a balance. It's about the give and take. Mm-hmm. Allow someone else to be in that giving position, and that will help you to start to pull back from being an overgiver.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Okay. The alpha stand back, she's got this in a different form of well, tell me what this is, and some unresourceful characteristics of this alpha person.
Yeah, she's great. She's the one that will walk into the room. She's got a lot of magnetism. She can lead a crowd. In fact, it's really interesting. There's been studies done where when you're in a group of people, the alpha in the group, when they're standing around in a circle, the toes will be pointed towards the alpha. It's really interesting to watch.
Wow.
I find these things really fascinating.
I find it fascinating too. Wow.
She's a go-getter. Part of her go-getting, that type A personality, she gets things done. She's also really good about raising other people up. She's a good mentor, very efficient, big thinker, and can run the organization, so to speak, wherever that organization might be. What gets her tripped up is when it's just a fear, too, of being average. So this might have been because of a parent that was very stringent, and she's not used to, or been overindulging, so she's not used to criticism. So this criticism is very uncomfortable for her. So she really pushes herself to exceed anything that she might think is, quote, normal. So where she gets tripped up, and because those are all good qualities, but where she gets herself tripped up is when she becomes overly aggressive or overly controlling, because then that pushes people away. And what she wants is she wants to connect. She wants to feel vulnerable. Very uncomfortable for this person to feel vulnerable. Vulnerability is difficult for many, but particularly for the alpha. So one of her solutions is, again, start small, start with that inner circle, choose something that you can feel vulnerable about that doesn't have any big consequences in case it goes amok, such as sit somewhere different at the weekly meeting. As simple as that, because, people go back to patterns that are comfortable for them, and it gives them a sense of security. Sit somewhere different. Allow someone else to shine their light and lead the meeting, whatever that might be. Within your family structure, allow yourself to listen longer than maybe you're an interrupter. We had a lot of that in my family. I come from a big family. We interrupted everybody. And so my mother would turn on a timer, and we had to be basically quiet and listen to the other person speak during that time. I'm so grateful for it because it allowed me to listen.
Yeah.
I learned how early on. So not that the alpha isn't listening. She just has to know that she can take a break and let someone else take the lead.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm kind of a combination of the alpha, I think, and the perfectionist. So I'm going to take a real life scenario. And then maybe you can tell me what tools, because so in your book you have a more thorough discussion. We actually just talked at a very top line of the various types, what the kind of traps are and what is driving us to behave this particular way, and then the solutions at the end were a whole bunch of different ideas and tools and techniques and questions to ask yourself. So I figured I'd give you an opportunity. I'm a real life subject, and I have just come off of 3 months of overscheduling myself. I was doing a remodel, and I didn't think it was that big of a deal because it was a bathroom remodel, and we just built a whole house last year, and it didn't seem like a bathroom seems like so small, but it was a bathroom, and then we were doing an outdoor part gardening, landscaping thing, and then we were doing something in the back. So it was like 3 smallish projects, so it didn't seem like that big of a deal. So I took on that. I took on an online women's career coaching workshop for 6 sessions, which I took on, and that I'd never done an online workshop before, so that was kind of a new thing. Then I took on a couple of clients, and I didn't think it was that big of a deal, but at one point it just hit me, and I thought, okay, I am totally overwhelmed. I have no idea how I got myself into this situation. And I talked to my health coach, and she said, yeah, I've been working with you since January. It's not just this remodel. You do this all the time. And that really hit me, and I thought, wow, okay, I think I have an issue. Thank God I'm talking to Yvonne tomorrow. So now with that insight, I have this opportunity to do yet another coaching workshop, either online or offline. I'm not sure. I'm talking to a person in another hour where we're going to structure whatever this thing is. I said, I can imagine doing, one of these workshops a month. And I know, I'm sure from doing similar type of work, like one workshop is a lot of work. Like it's not something you can just throw together and just assume, or you could, but because I'm a perfectionist, I want it to be perfect. I'm going to beta test it. So by the time it gets there, it's been vetted 3 times, those kinds of things. So I want some advice before I talk to this woman about how to structure this thing and a way to think about it. So I don't, because I can see, and my son is applying to colleges. That's going to take time and energy. I have this workshop that's coming up, and I have my same radio show that I do weekly and coaching clients, new coaching clients. So I have this array of different things, all of which I realize it's exhausting because it uses different parts of my brain. Like to create a workshop is a creative thing. And I'm taking a writing class. So I'm doing all these things at the same time.
I'm exhausted.
I know, it's exhausting just talking to me. This is what my life looks like. So I have this opportunity, which I think will be good because I learned a lot from doing this online workshop with these group of women. But then there was a part of me going like, don't you think you should have learned something from the last 3 months? So what advice do you have from this book that you could give me before I walk into the danger territory and have a too busy life? Or maybe is it too late? It's already too late.
The beauty of this is that you're asking the question.
Yeah.
So you've already started the process mentally, and which I believe everything happens between the ears.
Yeah.
Everything starts there. And it's the mind, and that's why it was so important to put those the mindset in there, those practices. So the first thing I want to say about everything that you just said, great projects, all of them. Not that you need my validation of that, but this is life. This is how life happens. It comes up, and sometimes it is busy. The difference between that and having a constant busy life is that it will end up taking its toll on our relationship and our health. Mm-hmm. So the first thing I want to say, if we have the attitude that everything is important, then nothing is important. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean? We have to establish some priorities. Mm-hmm. And I'm very visual, so I make a list. And this is going back old school. It's nothing new. We've known this for years. But the difference is this. When you make your calendar, if you will, Do you make a calendar about the things that are coming up, the beginning, the commencement of certain things that we have to do? So when we make a calendar, it's really important, a list of things that are important to us. And on a calendar, we have three categories, or on that list, we have three categories. We have the must, and we spend about 14 hours a day in that category. That's just getting life to go. That is filling out the college papers. That is making sure that our kids are where they're supposed to be and where we're supposed to be. Then there's this other category, and that's the wants. And this starts to get ignored. What's so important about the wants is this is where your creativity expands. This is where you start to have the ability to imagine and come up with solutions. This is where you set your goals. You put them into that space. And then the third piece, which is really important, and again, ends up being so optional for so many people, the third category on your list or on your calendar is the just because. And this is the space where you allow yourself to be without judgment or justification. This is when you do call up a friend and say, let's meet for lunch or let's go for a walk. This is when you walk in your garden or when you do take time to just be in a quiet space. And I often have clients push back and say, I'm too busy to be able to do that. And I always say to them, then let's back that up one step further. What do you want? And you decide what you want, figure out what you need to get to that want. And one of the first questions you ask yourself, what will change? Because you have to know what is going to change for you before you can decide what it is that you're going to do.
Okay, so I'll answer the question to see if we can play around with this. So in terms of what I heard you say, what I must do is what's the most important thing is making sure that my son successfully launches, and I have between now and December. So that is the first priority. The second priority is not to have my spiritual practice go by the wayside. And what I've realized is this is my spiritual practice, balancing all of this stuff and not going to AWOL is my spiritual practice. So I think that will happen just as a natural outcome. But if I start losing, like I don't meditate daily, then that's a problem. If I don't work out daily, that's a problem. So it's my son, and then personal well-being, and then meditation would be the three tops.
Well, I would reverse that.
Okay.
And I would put you at the top. Because here's what will happen. We'll get into the doing again. So I put meditation at the top. And the reason why I would do that is because, again, you're going to clear that space. You're going to nourish the brain and the mind. And in that space, you're also going to lower your blood pressure, your heart rate, and the cortisol that's produced from the anxiousness, the worrying, and the stress. So this is something fundamental that is a self-care that can be done in a very small amount of time. It's not something that you have to buy. It's not something that has a big learning curve. It's just about being aware of your bodily sensations, the environment, and being quiet for a certain amount of time. And I always tell people, start with 1 minute a day. And again, the question is 1 minute isn't going to make any difference. This is about adopting a practice. This is about moving into whether it's 5 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. We want the practice to be there. It will shift your mindset. You will make decisions and choices that are going to be more meaningful and that will take less time because your mind will be able to have clarity much more than it would when you're rushing. So once you carve out that space, the must are the things we have to get done. And I think it's in the book about the doctor's appointments, the work, the relationships that we have with what the things that we need to do each day. But allow yourself to have that space in the wants category. And when you look at your list, if you've got everything on the must and nothing on your just because and maybe one thing on your wants, that is a visual signal that there needs to be a better balance to be able to get to what it is that you're trying to create in your life.
Okay.
And so ask yourself, what am I getting from the workshops? And how will I know when I have it? What will change? That's an important question. How will I know when I have that? What will change? Those two questions.
Yeah. So for me, like the part that is for me, what I realize when I create the workshops, it's my creative outlet. So that's the part that is filled. And then what will change is just a sense of personal growth and learning, because I would say that the first workshop that I did online was okay. Like I learned a ton. And because I enjoy mastery, I want to do it again so I can get better at taking those learnings and learn more so that I can kind of refine something that I think is potentially something I would do longer term. So it's kind of an investment in a longer term thing that I would like to do. So that's the want, I think, is that the way of using your model?
Yes, and in the want is your space for deciding and creating that workshop. It's also when we create space and time, when we're not always cramming everything in and trying to when we're in that busy state. Again, creativity is going to get shut down. Imagination, certainly, Einstein said imagination is more important than knowledge. I would agree 100%. Well, we have to create space and time for that to grow. So when you look at this workshop, and someone once said to me, a great professor once said to me, nothing good disappears overnight. Now, there's always going to be people there to say, yes, it can. But my point is this. When opportunity knocks, yes, of course, we want to be prepared to receive it. But when we're in a situation as you are right now, and I feel for you, I know when I wrote my first workshop, I had no idea it was going to be as time consuming and as elaborate
It's a
as
ton of time,
it is.
yeah.
A lot of time. And so what I did, this might work for you, what I did prior to that is I created space before I began to write the workshop. And what I found was when I came into, and then I set a period of time, the time optimist has no ending. She'll start a project and she doesn't put a finish time or a finish date on it. So make sure that you have a start time and make sure you have an end time. And that will help you to begin to draw the boundaries, so to speak, around what it is that you're creating. Mm-hmm. But give yourself some space leading into that creative period and process. And perhaps that doesn't work for you. Maybe it's better for you to get it afterwards. But whatever it is, look at how you're feeling and how that experience is coming to you and how it's enriching your life again. Mm-hmm. Life has to happen. We have to make room and space for the college applications and the other chores and things that we do throughout the day. And certainly as women, we take on 80% of what's called non-paid work still to this day. Mm-hmm. So we have a lot on our plate. And when we are trying to expand our career and what it is that we're doing, where it's going to take more time, that's when it's going to be really important to have on your list or on your calendar those times during the day that are just for you, where you're replenishing yourself and enriching yourself through wellness, through meditation, through exercise, through good food.
Right. So I'm hearing us loop back to the very first part of our conversation, which you're saying that we feel like we don't have choice. We're kind of just at the disposal of others, going and doing things for others, joining groups for others. And so when we are at that place, we don't have a lot of choice, but we actually ultimately do have choice. And what I'm hearing from this exercise that we just did is being super conscious of the choices that we do have. And so, yes, let's be practical. There are some musts that need to happen that, if my kids were younger, it'd be driving them to school. Like that's a must because, yeah. So there are some musts. But then I love the idea of wants. Like, what are the things that you want? And what are things that are just because? Because I think that the just because things get cut off the list so quickly. And so if you have this balanced diet of these three things, it gives what I'm hearing you say, and it goes back again to the things that you said earlier as an example of that, is that if you give back to yourself first, then you're able to take care of others. And it's this kind of sustainable flow where everything is interconnected.
And that's what we're looking at. And that's the big point, is that we're developing a life for ourselves. That's a life. Yeah. We don't have to look at this big broad leap that we're creating this life. We take it a day by day, a step by step. Things are going to show up that are unexpected. When we are nourished and when we are well, when the unexpected shows up, because it will, we will be able to handle that in a way. My mother used to always say, it doesn't matter what happens. It only matters how we handle it. If we can keep that in mind, That will also keep us in a frame of mind that you always have a choice. You
Mm-hmm.
always have a choice. And when we start to develop wellness practices, and I always go back to meditation all the time because I feel that it's an incredibly powerful tool to have within my life and my practice, and certainly I've seen it for my clients as well. Again, when we use that, because we are nourishing our body and our mind. And it's very interesting. People will make time to go run or go to the gym, but they won't make time to nourish their brain in a way where we are creating space and time, where we know now through neuroscience, we know that this creates a healthy brain and mind.
Yeah. You know, I was just talking to someone who is a guru in India, and he just said something very simple. You have to start. Like, meditation is hard, and it's hard the very first time you try it, and you can and I think the way that you approach it is a good one. You know, do it for a minute, do it for 2 minutes the next day, or 2 minutes the next week. I mean, whatever period of time. But you have to start. If you don't start, then you don't get any of the benefits. And it doesn't happen immediately, but probably after the first couple of weeks, it will actually happen, I think.
Well, again, it's a practice. We're seeing this now in our schools, talking about kids going to school. We're seeing it now in our schools because of technology, that the distraction, the ability to focus and concentrate is diminishing. It's a practice to be able to sit down and you don't have to sit, by the way. I have many people that have a meditative practice that begins with movement, meditative movement through a circle.
Yoga, anything. Dancing can be meditative. Running can be meditative. It doesn't have to be sitting.
Yes, it can be meditative, but the difference between meditation is where it's quiet. And it's really interesting what happens when we quiet our space. It can be very unsettling for many people who are used to noise and sound. So again, it's a practice. You're developing those patterns. You're developing the ability for the brain to be in that space. And again, you're creating space for your mind to expand and invite in creativity and imagination and innovation. So it's important.
I agree. That's a great way to close it. Meditate. Any other? We've been talking to Yvonne Tally about her book, Breaking Up with Busy, Real Life Solutions for Overscheduled Women. We just hit upon one of her many ideas that are in the book. So get the book. Tons of really good ideas. Thank you so much for being here.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show. I would love your support in any way by giving me comments below, or to subscribe to the show, or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.